It's no secret that shopping for a new deposit account can be complex. With so many options and features to consider, it's easy for customers to feel overwhelmed. But here's the question. Is your bank or credit union unintentionally adding to the complexity with a frustrating user experience? Or are you simplifying the process, making the customer feel clear and confident when it comes to opening a new account? Let's find out together on today's episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
You're listening to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. I'm Audrey Cannata, operations lead here at the Digital Growth Institute. And joining me for today's conversation is founder and CEO, James Robert Lay.
Hey, Audrey.
Hey, James Robert.
Good to hang out with you again on a good topic that we've got for today.
Yes, really good topic that we have today. We conducted a couple this week. Man, we had a lot of secret shopping studies that we shared with a few banks and credit unions, which surfaced a lot of common patterns.
They really did, and that's the thing when it comes to facilitating website secret shopping studies. It is pattern matching. It's pattern
Yep.
matching primarily gaps, blind spots that are costing financial brands loans and deposits. And in many cases, there are quick wins that come out of every single one of these studies. I think there's a misconception, there's a fear that, oh my gosh, if I do a website secret shopping study, I'm just going to have all of this work. And that's not
Right.
always the case. More often than not, it's like there's a little bit of work to be done, but it's not a complete transformative overhaul. It's small little tweaks here and there that have a huge impact on the bottom line because it has a huge impact on the perception that prospective account holders have with a financial brand.
I'm so glad you said that because it's true. I mean, a lot of these recommendations and these findings, they are quick and easy wins. And I mean, sometimes these are action items that leave those in the room, some of the marketing team or whoever's on the call thinking, oh my gosh, like what? Why didn't I see that? I never noticed that before. And so, yeah, it's certainly not meant to be this overwhelming study with like this big overhaul. It is really designed to be a simple process.
I want to throw myself under the bus on that point because, like you said, sometimes those that we're working with feel, how come I didn't see that? And many times it's because we're inside the bottle. We're not able to read the label on the outside. And so I have had advisors, coaches, guides over the years help me get out of the bottle, take my
Yep.
hand, walk me around, read the label. And I'm like, how come I didn't see that? How come I didn't? It's like,
Yep.
it's so obvious. Case in point, I literally had that call this morning with my sales coach. We were talking about, I had spoken at a conference earlier this year. We had about 150 people text in for some bonus resources. And I said, he goes, well, how many people were in the room? I said, about 300 ish. He goes, did you ever think to ask the conference for the list of just people's names? Who was in your room? Who attended your session? Because this was a pre-conference session that people paid addition to the conference registration. And I'm like, I swear, I was like, how come I didn't
Like,
think about that?
right. You're like, idiot.
So this is very common, which is
It
where
is.
I've got a lot of empathy being on the opposite side of delivering findings and delivering recommendations that, I've been there too.
Right. And I think that is a great segue into the specific pattern that we picked up on because it is one of those things where you just don't realize it. I think we have a little bit of that bias, that, okay, it's our website. We understand. We know what to do. We know where to find things. It makes sense to us. And so we're a little bit blinded to the user who's never been to your website before,
Mm,
doesn't know who you are. And that's one of the things that we really discovered this week was this level of complexity, like cognitive overload on some of these websites. And we had many users like actually say, literally say, money is already complex. Like going to my bank website is already frustrating, overwhelming. And so I don't want that to be amplified, because there's a lot of noise and cognitive overload on the page. Like, I need that to be simplified. I want to feel more relaxed when I come because I'm already stressed out. And I know Joby Coleman in his book, Never Lose a Customer, uses like the dentist example,
mm.
going to the dentist. Nobody likes going to the dentist. Everybody hates going. But so that experience can easily be amplified. Like if you have a dentist with terrible bedside manner, it is like 10 times worse because you're already going to it feeling not good. But if you go into it and say there's bottle of water available for you, or like a really nice waiting room, that feels really, really good to you, even though it's something simple, because you're going into it thinking negative. Same with banking, same exact thing.
Well, I want to connect a dot right there because you mentioned Joey Coleman and his book Never Lose a Customer. There was a report that came out back in 2017 called the Millennial Disruption Index Report. And one of the things that they shared was 71% of millennials would rather go to the dentist instead of listening to what a bank has to say.
Yikes.
I think that right there
That's a lot.
is kind of a wake up call because we know the pain associated with going to the dentist. And if millennials back in 2017, which was it 7 years ago, if that's what millennials were feeling back then, and I don't think it's just millennials, I think it's just the general perception of banks as a whole. Because back to your point, money is stressful, money is emotional, money has for I mean 80 to 85% of Americans are dealing with some type of financial stress and anxiety. As a financial brand, our number one priority when thinking about shopping experiences, digital shopping experiences, should be to reduce the stress, to reduce the anxiety, and most importantly, to reduce the cognitive load that people feel. And
Yeah.
I want to just touch on that point of cognitive load. Cognitive load is just the mental energy that's required to complete a task or to achieve a goal or an objective. And so when we think about goals and objectives, it's getting the loan or getting the account that we need to achieve some type of deeper goal and objective. So that loan, that mortgage, that auto loan, that credit card, that small business loan, even the checking account, the spending account, that's just one point on a much deeper hero's journey. It's a tool. And so if we're inadvertently adding cognitive load to the shopping experience, well, then we're inadvertently losing loans and deposits for our financial brand.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the patterns we're seeing, some of the ways that these financial brands are adding to the cognitive load, whether they realize it or not. Actually, I'm sure they don't realize it because they wouldn't be doing it
Well,
if they did.
no, and there are three types of cognitive load that we must be mindful of. There's the intrinsic cognitive load, meaning the inherent difficulty of a particular subject matter. And you've already referenced that with money. But then there's the extraneous cognitive load or the cognitive load that we add by how we present or communicate a particular subject. And take take this and make this very practical. I know one of the quotes that came from one of these recent studies was shopping for a checking account is complex, quote unquote. Shopping for a checking account is complex. That's how people feel externally,
Yeah.
account holders and prospective account holders. We might not feel that way internally within the industry, which is where if I do believe that there's an empathy gap. And so one of the ways that we saw from these particular website secret shopping studies, a couple of these financial brands inadvertently adding extraneous cognitive load, how they communicate, how they position a particular product on a product page, specifically the checking account in this experience or these experiences, was the, we'll call them the side by side comparison. I remember one specifically, Audrey, there were three options to choose from. But the way that those options were presented side by side, it was not in a comparison table. They were in individualized boxes with bullet points within each box. So, for example, you had checking account A in a box, and then bullet points that were associated with A, checking account B, which were associated with the other, and then checking account C, bullet points associated to C. That was one example. The other example, they were in each one of the checking accounts were in expandable menus. So where you have the checking account name, you click on that name, and the box expands for all of the features within that particular checking account. Both of those presentations of information, data, communication from the feedback that we received through these website secret shopping studies added the complexity of making a decision.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because when we were asked the question, what is the most helpful? What was the most helpful in making your decision if you were to move forward with opening an account? And the people would say, "Oh, it's the list of features that they share. You know, this is what's most helpful." But then when we asked what was most frustrating and or what could be improved, they were like, the list of features. Like, we need this section, but the way it's presented is tough because they're having to like cross reference. Okay, this account has this, and this feature. And look at this account. Does it have that feature too? No, it has this one, but it also has that one. Hold on, let me think about that. Same thing with the drop down menus, the expandable form. You're looking down and then going back up, and it's a lot of back and forth. There's certainly more simpler ways to show that information, and we know that that's where people are going to look. They're
And
going to look there.
exactly, and that's where the third type of cognitive load we must be mindful of, which is known as germane cognitive load. Those are the schemas and the frameworks through which we communicate. And if you think about a schema, if you think about a framework to interpret information, this is where either a comparison table
Mhm.
that directly includes all of the relevant information. And I'm going to put a little pin in relevant for just a minute because we saw that there were some gaps in one of these
Yeah.
examples. Um, so you have a comparison table, or you have what's called a guided selling tool, which I want to come back to that. I'm being very mindful of how we're communicating here. I don't want to overload those who are watching or listening. So let's take the comparison table example first. And when I say relevant information, for this one particular financial institution, they had certain information that was associated with the product, the checking accounts, but then what was perceived as the most relevant information was actually further down on the page, presented as more of a disclosure.
Yeah.
Let's talk through that, because you saw some of the confusion popping up in the analysis here of
Yeah.
separating product features from what I would frame as product pricing.
Yes. So one of the things that people mentioned when before we even started the experience on the website, we just asked simply, what is most important to you? What are the most important deciding factors when opening a new account? Like, what are you looking for? And pretty much, the majority of responses were, I want to know the fees and I want to know the interest rate.
Mm,
Um, and so in this particular example, though, in their comparison table of each of the three accounts, neither one of those were there.
yeah.
And that was frustrating. People had to scroll down, little bitty tiny print, get out their magnifying glass and look to see what the associated costs were for the account.
Well, there's actually
And yet that's the most.
yeah, there's a third element too. It was fees, rate, and minimum balances.
Oh, that's right. Minimum balance open. Yep, to
Minimum
open.
balance to open and minimum balance to avoid said
Right.
fee. And back to your
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
all of that was at the very bottom of the page in a disclosure. And I think what's important here is why it was at the bottom of the page and where that recommendation came from.
Well, was it because, and maybe I missed this, but was it not wanting to scare them off?
That was the reason or the philosophy, but that recommendation came from their digital ad agency.
Agency. Yeah.
And so this created a very healthy dialogue because they acted upon the recommendation of the digital ad agency. And I kind of poked on this a little bit. And I didn't want to go too far to where it was insultive, but
Sure.
it was very clear that the ad agency had not done any secret shopping. And so to help the agency save a little bit of face and to help the organization not feel so bad, I said, "Listen, we're sharing what we're hearing from the market, from your ideal account holder, where there's confusion as it's presented today. I am one who never likes to assume anything. So I said, we have two conflicting points of reference. This is where A B testing can come into play
Yeah. Fair.
because there was some concern within the organization, within the financial brand that, well, we don't want to disclose that information up front. And I pushed back and I said, but pricing drives decision. And if we're not being transparent, then the question is from the mind of a prospective account holder, if you're not disclosing this and I'm having to go
What
and
else?
look for it, yeah, what else are you hiding? Or what else are you not
And
being
people
truthful
pick
about?
up on that. Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many studies recently where if there's not a fee or a rate or a price, whatever it costs, if it's hidden, people are like, "Oh, that's not good. That's not a good sign. I don't like that."
Mm,
And it's reducing their level of trust.
yeah.
In fact, we did one study where this one person, I mean, man, he went off on his feelings about free, using the word free, and he was like, "I would rather see a dollar sign attached than nothing, than the word free, even because it's like at least they're honest and transparent about it. At least I know." What I'm getting into. It's not secret. It's not hidden somewhere. So that was one real interesting thing. And another with these comparison charts, you said relevant information. How many features did we see on that comparison chart between the three different accounts that were the exact same all the way across?
That's a great point.
Taking up real estate. They all three have that. Well, then why is that listed as a feature?
So one of the recommendations, and this is a recommendation, I think having the context of time, I've been making this recommendation for at least a decade now because we've been secret shopping websites for that long, if not even just a little bit longer, maybe 11 or 12 years at this point. And I go back to some of the very early findings. When you have a comparison table, if every single product in that comparison table is included, there's no need to have check boxes all the way across three, four, or five different products. remove those check boxes for every single one, bring them out of the table. All checking accounts include
Yeah.
features or benefits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all of those become now icons. And
Yeah.
the reason that they're icons is because people can process data visually 60,000 times faster with an image than through written word.
Yeah.
And I want to brag on this institution real fast. And we're not going to disclose who they are for privacy's sake. But they have, Audrey, already applied some of the recommendations that we made a couple of
Really?
days ago. Yes.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna have to go look when we get off.
Um, one of the
Awesome.
gaps that they had, because I pulled up the site to look at specifically where they had some confusion, and I cannot go back and reference that. I actually have to go back to the recordings, and they've already applied the recommendations. They've already
Wow.
moved up the minimum deposit to open and then how to avoid the monthly fee. So they've already taken that out. But the other thing that they've done as well is they have actually they switched the pictures. So
Okay.
this particular institution was not, and like a lot of institutions have separated the mobile versus checking experience. They're two independent schools of thought. But what we're finding is that how do people access their money? Mobile, mobile app. And so this one particular institution has already updated the imagery to include mobile positioning through their visual communication. So big shout out to them. If you're watching or listening, to take that to apply this thinking that fast is we don't often see that every single day.
No, no, I am surprised, and that is awesome.
Yes. So definitely looking for ways to A, reduce cognitive load, but B, take the feedback from these website secret shopping studies because they're quick wins, they're low hanging fruit. And in this
Well,
particular example, they have
this is a
applied it.
great example because it just took them 2 days to make this adjustment,
It's
or
exactly
it only
right.
took them 2 days.
It's exactly right.
That's the whole idea. And I know we wanted to touch on guided selling too as another way to reduce the cognitive load. I mean, that could be another conversation itself.
I think we should pause on that
Okay.
one because just talking about presenting information, communication visually through a table, there are a lot
Yeah.
of quick wins if you're watching or listening to this that you can take and go apply today. Go look at how you're communicating your checking accounts.
Yeah.
Are you using a comparison table? Are you including the same features across the comparison table? And if you are, reduce the cognitive load, make it
Hmm.
easier, pull all of that out so you can truly see where the differentiators are. But then I would say tune in next time where
Yeah.
we're going to take the idea of the comparison table up to a whole new level that would make it more of an engaging conversational experience when someone is shopping for either a checking account, perhaps a mortgage, a credit card, personal loan, that we've been making recommendations for financial brands over the years with a lot of success. So I'm glad
Right.
you're pausing and pivoting on that.